Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Middle of nowhere stories. What's the weirdest or creepiest experience you've had in a rural or isolated place? We used to have lightning bugs every summer during the 90s. We would go outside and watch bats swoop around. Fogger trucks would drive down our road spraying fart mist in the air. We don't have lightning bugs or bats anymore, and honeysuckle no longer grows.
Bullhead City, Arizona. The airport lost my luggage, so I had no methadone that I'd been on for months. I was sick and on family vacation. I was screwed. So I had a cabbie take me to the worst part of the city. At first he was like, nah, but then I was like, yeah. So I ended up in this neighborhood that was eerily quiet and still with meth heads skittering about. I flagged a few down and asked where I could find shit, and the third one was like, okay, but you have to whisper. So we're walking through a dead-ass neighborhood and whispering, and he's telling me that cops are everywhere. He ended up ripping me off, but I met with other people, all 24 and younger meth tar heads living in this house together. They took me to this house where this woman was frantically looking in the mirror fixing her mascara. She never looked at me, but she rattled off, "You know you shouldn't be here. The people aren't good here. They're bad people. They kill people and take their stuff. This house, it used to be someone else's. The people here killed them and took their stuff. You have to leave. You shouldn't be here." And I was like, what in the hell? I ended up meeting others. All the people in this neighborhood were young and addicted to shit. No adults anywhere, all whispering and cracked out, insane vibe. I realized that these people were all gonna die in a few years' time, like they would never leave. This was their reality.
Only one time did anything ever happen to me that was strange. This made me realize our world has many secrets untold or unknown. I'll keep it as basic as possible. It's 1997. I'm 7 years old playing SNES in my room. Suddenly all the dogs in our neighborhood start going crazy, howling like they never have before. Stepdad thinks there is a criminal around. Suddenly a frantic bang at our door. It's the neighbor lady. She said she was going to check in on her mom across the street. Her mom was very old, so I fed the cats as a chore on the weekends while the daughter was at work, so I had a spare key. I went with my mom and neighbor to see if the old woman was okay. The lights in the living room worked, but nowhere else. We went inside the old woman's room. I stood by the door looking in. The daughter tried talking to her mom, but no response. Suddenly, as the daughter started to feel for a pulse, the mother gave a big gasp and said something. I couldn't hear, but later my mom told me she said, "He's here." I looked where she was looking. Everyone was. There was a dark shadow by the window opposite the bed. I suddenly smelled cigarettes. It went away as I watched it. It was not shaped like a man, but vaguely a human. After that, the mom slowly turned her head, and then silence. All the dogs stopped howling right then. We called the ambulance after, and that was that. I was told the old woman had an abusive husband who smoked. The daughter believes he was there that night. He died from a motorcycle accident in 1982.
Was the woman all right?
No, she died that night, right when she fell silent. Her daughter had the cat and I stopped going over.
I've shared this one before. Me, best friend, and his mom all go to a cabin up in the Ozarks of Arkansas. Take a long gravel road off of a 2-lane highway for 2 or 3 miles to reach the place. Closest neighbor of his is maybe half a mile or mile in from the highway. They live in a rundown trailer with various scrap and junk in the yard. Looks like a wrong-turn film set. Sketchy-ass kid. Maybe 14 to 16, sitting on the side of the road in tattered, unwashed clothes holding a rifle. Just standing there staring at us with evil eyes. I'm half expecting him to tell us to stop and try to toll the road or some shit. Wave to try and break tension. He doesn't wave back and just stares at us, holding his rifle. Didn't screw with us, but the entire scenario was off-putting. After the weekend ends, leaving the cabin. Good mile and a half. Maybe 2 miles from weird neighbors. Half hungover and drunk from yesterday, but coherent and aware of my surroundings. Walking to the car with our stuff to head back. My friend and I both hear a "hello" from the forest, and we both look at each other. Look around and can't see anyone. Yell, "Hello?" back several times, but no one says anything. Ask his mom if she heard that. She thinks we're joking or still too drunk from yesterday, but we both know what we heard. Surrounding area is posted on private property. Not sure if the weird Deliverance-looking kid worked his way near and tried to freak us out or what.
Not necessarily super creepy, as it could be something known, but who knows? Be me. I live in Nowheresville, Arkansas. Be in school at the time. Work as a farmhand for my pa. Have to drive and feed cows after school. Be winter November, if I remember correctly. Gets dark quick. Get to the biggest farm I need to feed at like 7 o'clock. Pitch black gif. Stop the truck. Gets out to open the gate. Whistling "Be Happy" to myself. Starts to unlock the gate. Opens, and turns off the truck. Starts pouring grain into buckets. After the last bucket, I hear a small sound. Whistling. The shit.jpg. It's really slow, and it's the tune of "Don't Worry, Be Happy," it sounds like, but very offbeat. I don't really think much of it. For the next week, I keep hearing it, very faintly on the next property over. Idea.x. On the next day I came, I planned on whistling a different tune. Sure enough, comes back the next day. Whistles like I'm calling a dog. Whistles right back. I'm kinda having fun with this now. From now on, when it whistles at me from across the property, I whistle back. One day, I decided to go look at the property. Does my routine. Whistles. Kinda hear it on the top of the hill. Walks up there. Keeps whistling. On the way up, I tripped, and when I fell, I cursed after busting my knee, and a few yards of walking towards where the whistling had been. Heard myself say the curse a few couple yards above the hill. I wasn't scared, but the sound just didn't compute in my head. Had a feeling I should leave, and did so. Haven't heard the whistling again, but have deemed it the whistler. I'm thinking it could be a mockingbird or something like that, but I can't explain the mimicry of what I said. So, yeah, my feels when.
I live in New Jersey, and the state is quite famous for the amount of haunted roads that it has. Long story short, I was around 12 at the time. My older brother picked me up from a friend's house I was visiting, like 40 minutes away. It was late, about 12:30 a.m., in a fairly remote area of New Jersey near the Pine Barrens, so there was basically nobody on the road. About 15 minutes into our trip back, we got onto a remote-looking 2-lane road with basically no intersections or turns for miles. All of a sudden, we're both startled by the flash of high beams right behind us. It's this older-looking black pickup truck tailgating us by basically a foot or two. I've never heard a vehicle so loud in my entire life, especially not since. It sounded like a straight-piped exhaust, but twice as loud at least. We could physically feel the ground shake whenever its engine roared. This went on for about 20 to 30 seconds, and as you'd expect, me and my brother are freaking out and going over twice the speed limit to get away from this thing. But this truck didn't move like a normal car, because no matter how fast we went, it always remained perfectly at the same distance behind us, almost like it was floating. All of a sudden the lights go off and it just disappears. Keep in mind that we were still on the road with no turns or intersections until a few miles ahead of us, so there was no reasonable explanation for anything that happened. We both came back traumatized and didn't mention anything for days. I found out years later that it was actually a more common occurrence than I thought. There were accounts of people that got run off that particular road late at night by an old black pickup truck, and some actually died from flipping their cars when they hit a certain embankment on the side of the road when they ran off. Creepy stuff.
I was at a dark gas station one day, refueling my tank because I needed gas. There was nobody there, and there was a slight wind. I felt chilly, so I went inside my car and sat there while it refueled. When it finished refueling, I went back outside and looked around. Nobody there. I went over to the pump and put the nozzle back. Then I collected my receipt and got back in my car. I put my keys in the ignition and drove home.
Similar thing happened to me. Be an office clerk, working late one night. Everyone else went home several hours ago, clocking out. The building is eerily quiet. The elevators don't work. so I have to take the stairs. Lights in the stairwell are busted. Make my way downstairs into the main lobby. The front door that's always locked is slightly open. Confused. Make sure to close it on my way out. Hear the alarm set. The walk to the parking garage is dark. People say the garage itself is haunted. Make it to my car with no trouble. Pull out and drive away. Glance up at the floor I was just working on. I'm certain I shut off the lights. They're off. Not a soul up there. I drove home without any problems.
Go night fishing with two brothers. It's really spur of the moment, and miles from where we live. Get there just before 11:30 p.m. Second, we sit on the pier. There's an absolute downpour and a heavy wind. We should head back. Brothers call me a wuss and insist we'll catch something. By about 1:30 a.m., we haven't caught anything except a potential cold. Start driving back. It's about 90 minutes to 2 hours to home. Road we're on is a highway, but there's nothing nearby, and it is really isolated. Turn on the radio to the usual station. It isn't the usual station playing. It's an unbelievably niche genre of music that I only know about because I listen to it and go to the one club in the country that plays it. Become aware of absolutely blinding light that feels like it's been there ages, but we only just noticed it. Huge truck behind us, like a big rig, starts blaring its horn. The hell? There's 3 lanes and no one around. Go in one of those if we're in the way. Freaks us out a bit, but drops back. See it come absolutely barreling up the road behind us, flashing its lights and blaring the horn. Nah, screw this. It's towing something. There's no way it's faster than a car, even with 3 of us in it. Brother puts pedal to floor. Truck keeps up with absolutely no problem at all. I'm starting to shit myself. Turns its lights off, but stays behind. You're talking a matter of feet away. Keep doing this. Dropping behind, then speeding up. Lights on and off. Horn blaring for about 10 minutes. Radio starts messing up like it's searching for a signal. Regular radio station comes back on. Truck is completely gone. It was like a cross between something from Roadkill, Joyride, and Jeepers Creepers. It was really bizarre, and I didn't like it one bit.
I have an acquaintance who would bike literally all over the Midwest, and there was one occasion wherein he traveled from Chicago to Gary and back. When he got to Gary, there was a severe storm front heading in, and he decided that traveling during this weather would be ill-advised. So in Gary, he searched for shelter. He found an old abandoned church where he settled down for a bit, and he took some pictures in there. There was satanic graffiti on the walls and a piano painted red, which he probably still has on his phone. If I recall correctly, he slept in there too. He also told our friend group about how there were potholes in that town that were so old that they had fish in them. Completely unreal.
My mom was a hippie chick back in the 80s and ran away from home at age 16 because at that age, you know everything. Here's a story I could have done without hearing. Be my mom in southern Wisconsin. Year is 1985. Run from her parents' house because ma adventure. Ill-constructed plan is to hitchhike to the south, do some shit, then hitchhike back. Should happen inside a month. Easier said than done, of course. Leave, traveling a couple days. Hitch some rides enough to get to southern Illinois. Wind up in a vaguely threatening countryside. No people at all, just rural America with roads in need of repaving. A very odd feeling the whole time she's down there, like she's being watched. When she developed schizophrenia, she'd feel the exact same sensation of her presence being noted by some kind of predator. This was creepy. Keep on walking. Sun setting. As she walks, a van drives past her. She sees a woman lean out the window of the van to look at her. The woman just stared at her for like 10 seconds as the van drove out of sight. Weird. Sun down, moon up. The countryside stillness is threatening to her. The kitchen knife in her pocket feels very small. As she walks down a slightly curved road, she shudders at a familiar silhouette. Van. No headlights, just traveling blindly, drives past her as it did before. Out of a scared curiosity, she turns around to witness the van driving far down the road, lit by full blue moonlight. It disappears behind a curve. She decides she'll walk all night, find a motel in the morning. A couple of minutes later, hears something behind her. Oh, God. The van's lights are still off. As it approaches, she sees its door on the side is open, like 4 people inside. Hell no. She begins sprinting away. The van moves faster. She feels something hit her head. Falls. Hands all over. Please no. Dazed from her head injury, gets lifted into the van. Please God, don't let anything happen to me. The people inside the van are giggling like children who know a terrible secret. As my mother's panicked breathing evolves into horrified yells, a handkerchief is stuffed inside her mouth by one of the people restraining her. Then they tie a rag around her mouth to further muffle her voice. They turn her over and tie her hands behind her back and her feet together by the ankles. Then they bend her body backwards and tie her hands and feet together. The rope is very tight and prickly. The handkerchief in her mouth makes it difficult to breathe, like she might inhale it by accident. It all hurts so bad. The people are whispering to each other. She can't hear them over the whining of the van, which is going very fast now. They continued driving for about half an hour. Then the road becomes gravel for another few minutes. Then they stop. One of the girls in the van is laughing like an insane person. Hears the girl say, "I can't believe we're about to do this." The door opens. My mother sees a clearing. There's a big tree stump in the center. Some of the van people carry her over and place her on top of the stump. They cut the ropes holding her and restrained her immediately. 3 guys hold her arms and legs apart, and her legs especially wide apart, as someone locks her wrists and ankles into some metal rings, like those on the end of prison chains. They haven't removed the clothes in and around her mouth, but she's screaming as terribly as she can. Then someone lights a fire behind her. It's a really big fire. One of the guys begins talking like he's reciting a Bible hymn. She panics even more as another guy uses shears to cut off her clothing. She's praying to God aloud as she feels cool air and the rough stump beneath her scratching her body. The fire gets even bigger. The people spectating are all laughing and chanting. She can't hear what's being said. She only knows something beyond terrible is going to happen. And then these people dragged my mother to hell. Someone removed the cloth from her face and mouth. She doesn't remember much after that. She recalls lying helplessly as she is surrounded by malevolent giggles and bright flickering firelight. And she saw the devil. This is the part where she had to take a breather and prepare herself to tell it. She saw a blackish face, like a face covered in soot. Black eye sockets, black mouth, red eyes with very wide pupils, yellow-ass teeth. He looks straight into her eyes, into her heart, like he's about to indulge himself on the finest dessert. She saw herself, and the devil man, and all the people surrounding them. She was having an out-of-body experience, watching above, seeing these demonic creatures around her. And then she finally lost consciousness. She awoke in a hospital back up in Wisconsin. Her parents were there, holding her hands. She was found in a ditch a couple 100 feet from a bar. The police were called. She was taken to the ER, and when they found out she was the missing girl from Wisconsin, they brought her back up there after her good health was determined. She was in a coma for 5 days. When she awoke, she kept seeing things out of the corner of her eyes. The trauma activated her schizophrenia. It was very intense at first, but luckily she was able to get most of it out of her system over the years. She continued further. She told me that the devil man who was there that night left something inside her, and it grew and grew and grew until one day her parents had to rush her to the hospital. She gave birth to a beautiful baby. At the time, her schizophrenia was too intense to let her mother a child, so for a few years the baby would be cared for by my mother's grandparents. Wait, what? After saying this, she turned to me. She asked me, "Have you ever noticed that your father has brown hair and brown eyes, and I've got brown hair and blue eyes, And your brothers have brown hair, but you're as blonde as can be. I felt my stomach drop. I squeaked out a no. Then my mother smiled at me, very warmly and understandingly, with an unhinged glimmer in her eyes which I had not seen too often. Because you're that baby, sweetheart. I wanted to vomit. She told me. When that devil man did what he did to me, what he wanted to do was plant nothing but evil in my belly. And then you came here, to the earth, and I held you in my arms, and all I felt was love. And when I had you, I didn't have a scratch on me. There wasn't nothing that devil man could do to me now, 'cause I had something he didn't, and that's how I defeated him. Then she pinched my cheek and said, "You're my guardian angel. My face when my middle name is Christy. My mother is the most mentally unhinged, frenetic, and empathetic person I have ever known. I love her more than anything in the world. Sometimes I think about the devil man and what he's like now, and what I'd do if I ever met him. I would probably kill him."
Here in south-central Alabama, my brother and I were shooting an air rifle in my dad's yard when we decided to trek a bit into the woods. We loaded the rifle but took no more ammo. So one shot, whatever, nothing's gonna happen. We pass through a few clearings and find what looks to be a deer trail of sorts that loops onto itself. At some point during all this, it gets super cliché quiet. We barely notice until we realize a pattern. The only noises we can hear, we only hear when we're speaking. My brother and I pick this up at the same time and start testing it without letting on with our words that we know. Every time we speak, we hear rustling and twigs breaking. My brother and I squat down and look in the direction of the noise while keeping up the ruse. Eventually, we see a tall old white man wearing a baby blue, tucked-in button-up, torn-at-the-knee blue jeans, a brown cowboy hat and black boots slowly stalking forward and listening intently. He was about 10 feet away when he noticed us crouching. My brother said, "Hey!" and the man just stood there staring. He then said, "We're sorry, we're leaving," and quickly walked back to Dad's yard. We could have been on private property, but what was really weird was that the guy didn't say anything or even look a certain way when he found us. Same yard, bunch of people gathered for grill and chill, suddenly hear a loud help. We all freak out, start yelling back, even go looking on the tree line and got nothing. Few weeks later, body was found in Conacook National Forest. Probably unrelated, but spooked me.
Traveling through South Carolina. Never been here, just passing through. Moving down a fairly isolated road because I'm kinda lost. Spot something in my rear view. These bright lights are just bouncing across the sky. Hit the brakes. Never seen anything /X/ related, and I'm thinking it's my first UFO sighting. Turns out to be something weirder that I can't classify. I pulled over about to exit the car, but I don't. Feeling tense, I turn and just watch the lights for a bit through the window, hesitant about getting out of the car for some reason. Watching lights moving sporadically, they all suddenly sync up into a single straight line. In unison, they move down behind some trees. The whole road was totally surrounded by trees. Realize at that moment that something has been watching me. In the trees that the lights just disappeared behind. Reflective eyes. They're way up high near the top. Think I'm seeing things. But I make out a shape. Like a giant cousin it. Only black and tall as the trees. Cousin it backs up in one fluid movement. Trees bending and snapping as it goes. It disappears. As said, Appalachia is cursed. I'm still convinced I encountered a Wendigo or skinwalker when my tire ran flat and was watched by a Mothman when I was night hiking once. Similar situation a few weeks later. Driving home, I had to take care of my parents' dog. Close to that area hit a pothole or some shit and my shitbox truck decides that the rear tire is finally gonna pop. Still spooked about the thing I saw a few weeks prior, decide that it's only a few hours to daytime and I'll just sit on the side of the road with the car running. Around the 2-hour mark, I absolutely have to piss, so I end up getting out and going to the back of the truck, remembering to grab my pistol. Just as I start pissing, I hear definite tapping or knocking on the front hood, and someone says something definitely foreign. Literally piss myself. Contemplate my impending doom. After a second, a person approaches, hugging the side of my truck practically. Dude is not normal. Looked older than he should have for his eyes. His eyes, though, I specifically remember being brighter shade of orange. At this point, I'm still standing there, zipping up my pants, and the best thing I can say at the moment is, "What's up?" Dude doesn't talk, just looks at me and smiles. Those eyes penetrated my soul. Say something along the lines of always the worst time to have a flat, or something like that. Dude just nods a second. After a second or two of staring at me, he finally says something. "Are you scared of the woods?" he said. And as he did, his smile went away. No. Dude tries telling me there's something he can show me in the woods. Politely decline. Eventually he keeps asking, more intently than the last, before eventually reaching the point of aggressiveness. At this point he moved towards me, and that's where I drew the line, pointed my pistol at him, and mag dumped. Dude falls back into the ditch, but he's still moving, scrambling. Brush is way too rough to actually see where he went. Swear to God I hear dog-like whimpering as I shoot, and as the dude was scrambling away. Decide to just go home and forget this happened. Hopefully. The wife is superstitious and I couldn't tell her. A week or so later, my wife starts talking about a coyote hanging around the house. I eventually press her for details without being too obnoxious about it. Says it's usually wandering on the mountainside near our house when she leaves in the morning for work. About 4:30 or 5 a.m., and in the evenings when she comes home. Start sitting outside on the back porch during those times with binoculars, eventually start seeing it. Thing's huge for a coyote, especially for Appalachia, and as I'm looking at it through the binoculars, it's looking directly at me. Swear it has the same orange tinge eyes. Thing's only like 50 to 60 yards from the house. Last week or so I've been seeing him more often. Our animals refuse to go outside when the coyote's around. Wife, oddly enough, loves standing outside to watch it, and seems to notice a lot quicker when it's around, which is odd considering how she usually isn't very observant. A few days ago, I took my rifle, .300 Winchester Magnum, mind you, and sat outside waiting for it when the wife wasn't home. Eventually see it, standing broadside to me while still looking at me. Thing's only like 40 yards away. I know it was a hit because I saw the impact on the body and saw the blood. But the thing just ate a body shot from a .300 Winchester Magnum and kept standing, just walking away in the woods. 2 days ago, our cat escaped, which is odd because he never wants to go outside. Yesterday, our cat was on our back porch, mangled but still barely alive. Just alive enough that the wife saw him before work and called in sick. Cat didn't make it. Our dogs are absolutely refusing to go outside anymore, especially at night. Now keep in mind, I'm still seeing this fucker, so if y'all got advice, please tell me. The wife is currently spending nights at her parents' with the dogs. Not sure what to do anymore besides sell.
He killed your cat. Revenge is the only correct path to take. Buy every gun you can, every type of bullet you can. Light it up, piss on its corpse. Do that before it comes after your wife.
I actually have one from Mexico. If anybody could please educate me on what it might have been, I'd appreciate it. I've been trying to figure it out for years. My friend is visiting pals in Mexico City. He invites me to come. I don't know them, but okay. We get there, and my friend wants to take a ride to the outskirts of the city. Can't remember exactly where. One of the guys showing us around tells us there's this spot where he says the trees bleed. It's out back behind this guy's house in the mountains. I'm worried about narcos, but my friend wants to see it. We drive further into the mountains and stop at this one house that's off by itself. Owner's out front. Guys ask if we can check out the bleeding trees. Guy is super friendly and says sure. Grabs a machete and leads us out back, thinking we're going to get beheaded. He stops at these weird trees and hacks at them. They make a hissing sound. Then this dark red liquid oozes out. Nor rusty orange and not like sap. This was deep red and looked exactly like blood. Guy even rubs it on his fingers and shows us. It dries like blood too and smells like it. Anybody know WTF this was? Natural explanation preferred. I don't want to hear some haunted tree bullshit.
Years and years ago, when I was about 15, 27 now, Me and a friend met up to go to the beach, or as we say in the UK, the seafront. It's a stony beachfront with a small woodland behind it. Beautiful place. We walked there together, around 9 or 10 at night. This was in summer, so the sun was just going down. We walked to the end of the beach, avoiding the woodland behind us as it was getting dark. Then another friend met us there. We were just chilling, sun going down so the streetlights blinked on. We sat on the wall talking. We were facing towards the woodland, so the beach is now behind us and didn't feel spooky as there were streetlights. Well, that's when this stone was thrown with force from the forest towards us. Then they were just being pelted at us, stone after stone, with force. You could hear them land on the other stones on the beach behind us. One was a rock, but it was thrown so hard no human could have thrown it that far. We blamed our other friend and said he must have one of his mates in the forest winding us up. Well, we all walked into the woodland and no one. Nothing. It was so quiet all you could hear was the sea waves rolling onto the beach. You would at least hear someone moving around the forest, stepping on sticks and shit. To this day I am still so baffled. The forest isn't stony, so how the F did it throw the stones from the forest? TLDR. A ghost threw stones at me and my friends from a forest.
I would never do this today, but back in 2018 I was somewhat stupid. Be 23-year-old extra in a shitty Netflix show called The Society. Filming at New England Studios in Devons, Massachusetts. Not the sticks, but still the middle of nowhere. Always park in an old giant lot next to some old giant brick building that looks like a school, then get shuttled by Teamsters to the studio. One night I'm ready to go home, but the shuttle still needs to be filled. Get itchy ass and decide to walk the rural road back to the lot with my car. Obviously I'm being a dumbass doing this sketchy mile or so journey alone, but I don't care. Walking. Start thinking about how any one thing could come out of the woods. Walking by a field next to woods. See what looks like individual white stripes hopping toward woods. Don't particularly care and yell at them because I'm dumb. They keep retreating and enter the woods. Was pitch black, so I don't know what they were, but I assumed they were partially visible deer. Probably not, though, because the white on them was so oddly unlike what you see on a deer. Never doing that again. Arriving at the lot, I see a shuttle pulling into it at the same time I turn the last corner. They took a different way back because the road I walked was deader than the town itself. Fuck me, what a waste. Could have literally saved time if I hadn't walked. Never walk the streets of a dead town alone at night. I sometimes wonder why I would ever want to do that. Wasn't feeling adventurous. Probably just overtired from filming all fucking day.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.